As I speak with real estate agents that are getting into the business, oftentimes their biggest reason for doing so is so that they can add more income to their life and more time freedom to their life. Yet oftentimes that's not what the industry delivers to them. Oftentimes they end up having less income or sporadic income, and or they end up having less time freedom. Today's guest and episode is all about helping you to create consistent, predictable income. And that is done in two ways. Number one is having the right mindset. Dan Rochon and I discuss having the right mindset. What are some key tactics that you can implement today to help reprogram yourself so that you do have the right mindset to do the work? And then the second part, great segue, is to actually do the work. What does that work look like? Dan gives some really great insight on what you can be doing, what your calendar looks like, specific blocks of time you need to have on your calendar, and ways that you go about interacting with those time blocks to be sure that you get the results. And then kind of a final bonus that Dan offers is why it's so important for you to have consistent, predictable income, not for you, but for your clients. And that will be a real treasure that will really benefit you. I'm excited for you to hear this episode. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Justin Stoddart. Very excited about today's episode. It really is an opportunity for real estate agents to figure out exactly how they can have consistent and predictable income. At a time when real estate agents are trying to figure out exactly how to deal with this new COVID situation, right? How to really reestablish themselves when the world has been slightly shut down. We're going to revisit the principles that help you to not only be great at what you do, but also to have your bottom line, your income, and the life that you set out to get when you signed up to be a real estate agent. We're going to revisit those principles. I have with me today a very esteemed author. His name is Dan Rochon. Dan, thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me today.
Yes. Dan is out of Virginia. Let me just give a little background on Dan. Dan, just, he's frequently speaks to the media. He's one of their go-to guys when it comes to his perspective on what's happening in the real estate market. Obviously, there's all kinds of questions right now as the world has kind of shifted slightly. He's actually the author of Real Estate Evolution, the 10-step guide to consistent and predictable income. And he's got a long list of other things that you'll learn about Dan as we get into the show. But Dan, I want to thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a leader in the real estate industry, and really today pouring into the Think Bigger real estate audience, helping us to really understand what it takes to create consistent and predictable income.
It's my pleasure, Justin. And I think today, more than ever before, agents really need to have a pathway to have, assurance and knowledge to know that they're going to have a paycheck, month after month. Because if it was hard before, and it is much harder today. And thanks for having me on your show, Justin.
Yeah, you bet. It's interesting. It's regularly stated and said that the work that you do today will pay you 90 days from now, right? That's like kind of a common theme in the real estate industry. With several weeks, if not for some months, there wasn't a lot of work going on. This whole topic of consistent, predictable income is probably on the top of everyone's mind. Like, they realize that for some of them, now some of them were as busy as ever, right? But others had a time where they couldn't show homes, right? They couldn't do a lot of they couldn't do open houses, which is one of the key ways that they got business. And they realized that, boy, 90 days from every day that I'm not doing something, 90 days from now is going to be a problem. So I'm really excited to be able to bring to them some principles from your book, by the way, that are going to really help them be able to kind of fill that gap as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and you're so right, Justin, about the activity that we do today produces results 90 days from now. So here's the reality of that. If 90 days ago, if you weren't able to, or you chose not to do any activity, guess what? There's not a lot that you can do about it today. However, hopefully, let's see, June, July, August, September, you're going to still want to eat probably August and September. I'm sure if you're a real estate agent, eating is probably a good thing. And if that's the case, then you probably want to have income in those months, and you can definitely do something about that today. So I go through the book in regards to, several steps. We could dive into that, but really, so, you mentioned the 10 steps of C.P.I, which is consistent, predictable income, which is, it starts with flourishing and who you're going to choose to be, and then, how to look for leads, and then how to convert those leads, how to give a great presentation, and really how to go through every single step of the way to achieving profit. You know, the last 129 months consecutively, I have had between 1 and 15 closings every single one of those months. And so my business has been consistent. It's been predictable. And I'm able to show readers in the book how you as a listener or viewer, how you can also have that consistent, predictable income.
You know, give us some tips, Dan. I think you've probably whet all of our appetites as far as what that looks like. Maybe something that we have that, and again, sometimes it's like we just need to hear again what we've been hearing for a long, long time. But is there something that you've found in creating that predictable income, right? Those predictable results? Because again, it's typically the peaks and the valleys, right? It's the highs and the lows. What is it that you would say is the biggest reason why agents don't create that?
So Justin, here's the deal. Most trainers, and I've been, the first trainer that I ever had in the business was Floyd Wickman, who's a fantastic trainer, right? So I've had the privilege to be trained by many and led by many, great trainers. Most trainers, however, they start, I think, a step down the road with lead generation. And yes, for lead generation, it is required. If you want to have business 90 days from now, you have to lead generate. You have to find business. Yet there's a step before that I think most trainers miss, which is the personal development. Okay, and it's in the book. I give you hacks I'll give you a quick. So one of the things that I talk about in the book is the self-coaching program, self-coaching model. So what the self-coaching model is that what we program to ourselves leads to the way that we think. Right. So if we program ourselves in a manner that we're going to produce great results, then we're going to think that we're going to produce great results. And then when we think that way, we're going to have great feelings, which are going to lead to the right actions, right, which are going to then lead to the results. And so if you're putting crappy things into your programming, that's what's going to happen is, your results are going to be poor. If you're putting great things in your program, then your results are going to be great, hopefully. Now, here's the way. There's some hacks to be able to do this that I talk about, such as meditation, affirmations, visualizations, because the mind, when you can visualize yourself closing 10 transactions a month or taking 10 listings a month, and if you could believe that, your mind, it can't tell the difference between actually doing 10 a month and actually, in visualizing 10 a month, your mind can't tell the difference. And for me, I do about 10 a month myself right now. I have to, I do shows like this, Justin, really to help remind myself to sit there and say, okay, now it's time to visualize helping 10 agents a month on my sales team so that they each do 10 a month. And now we're doing, a whole bunch of business. So,
it's interesting how often this concept of affirmations is talked about, right? The fact that you've got to visualize and believe it. It's one of those things that's really quite easy to do, yet it's also easy not to do. And I think that's where a lot of people, get tripped up, is it's like, oh yeah, it's such a small thing. But we don't realize that those small things compound on each other. It's small, but it's so impactful. What do you do, or what do you teach your agents to do to make it to where those affirmations actually make it on the calendar and actually make it into their life?
This morning, I was talking to my team on our power up. We do a power up every morning. And I had asked for them to take an affirmation and to put it on their schedule. I'm holding up my phone to put it on their schedule on their phone, to put a notification 3 times a day. And so that whatever affirmation, and we all chose a different affirmation. My affirmation that I'm working on right now is what you focus on expands. And so 3 times a day, that will pop up on my phone. It will just remind me, okay, that's what I'm focused on right now. What you focus on expands. And so, for example, this morning when I'm thinking about the activities that I do, then I have to understand that sitting there, before this show, and I know you're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, so I've already done my lead generation today. I know you're just starting. And so I sat there and said, well, what am I going to focus on today? I'm going to focus on attracting talented people to my organization that want to have significance in their lives, want to achieve more, want to have the mentorship, the coaching, and the results that they deserve. And I'm going to focus on getting more listings. Well, I couldn't do both of them in my lead generation time this morning. So I've got a listing appointment after this. And then when I come back to the office, my home office later today, I will go ahead and finish focusing on listings, because what I focus on expands. So this morning I focused on having great high-minded conversations with agents. And then today, later, I'm going to focus on, finding the next person that will list with us.
So do you take, let's say, for example, that you are attracting listings. do you say those affirmations right before you start lead generating for listings? Like you say, I attract X number of listings, or I attract listings, and then you start the lead generation calls for listings. Is that what that looks like? Is that how
it's more for me, it's more of, there's a difference with visualization and affirmations, right? So an affirmation is, I'm going to take 10 listings this month, right? Or I'm going to gracefully and with ease take 10 listings this month. I'm worthy to achieve my goals, right? Those are some affirmations, right? I would say yes to you, Justin, yet for me, it's much more in the subconscious than the conscious level. Because for me, when I begin to lead generate, it's just an expectation I'm going to set an appointment, right? Like it's not even something that I consider that I won't. And so maybe early on, I had to consciously think about that. But what you'll realize is that we talk about that programming. Well, that programming is programming 93% of your brain, which is the subconscious. Okay. It's sort of like you and I, when we go home, we drive a car, like you don't have to think about it, right? So now it's like when I'm doing my lead generation, I don't necessarily have to consciously program myself because I've done that for years and years and years. And so now I'm on autopilot. I'm just going to go take a listing today. Now I say that sort of haphazardly, like it's no big deal. And I understand for most it is a big deal. Yet when you train yourself and you program yourself day after day after day after day after day after day, then you're going to be able to, it just more naturally just happens.
It's interesting, this concept of the subconscious mind. If 93%, like you just quoted, right? 93% of our lives are on autopilot based on programming that our subconscious mind has, that our subconscious mind already adopts and has programmed, right? It's already set that we're going to act a certain way. We're going to see the world through a certain lens or series of lenses. How does one go about? Is that maybe what you're saying, is that these affirmations start to change the programming to where the subconscious mind treats the world we live in differently?
Yeah, but you have to believe it, right? Like if you don't believe that you're going to take 10 listings this month, start at 2, start at 1. Okay. So, that's one of the challenges with it is if you can't say something and then consciously say, yeah, it's a bunch of whatever. Right. So you have to consciously believe what you're saying is within reach. Right. And so what I found is if you have a big, huge goal, then maybe expand your time frame out for that just a little bit. And the other thing is, I don't have my wallet with me. I also write down my goals as well. You can see in my background, there's that Miss Pac-Man machine back there. And if you're listening to this,
I've had my eye on that since we started.
All right. Well, check this out. That Miss Pac-Man machine lived in my wallet for about 5 years. And what I mean by that was I wrote down 100 things of what I was going to accomplish and achieve in my life. Oh, and by the way, writing this book was one of those 100 things. And that list of 100 things still resides in my wallet, and I hardly ever look at it. I never had a conversation with anybody about this Miss Pac-Man machine. One day I came home, my wife, and I swear to you, I never even talked to her about it. I come home and there's a Miss Pac-Man machine sitting in my basement. That was an anniversary gift to me, right? And I never talked to her about it, never. Right now, I don't know if that's just coincidence. I don't know, maybe I said something when I was sleeping. I don't know how that happened, right? And I really, truly don't necessarily believe that like I created that, through my mind or whatever. But I will tell you this, I created this through my mind. I could tell, writing this book is something that I wrote down to sit there and say, I will write a book that will help people, impact them in their lives, to show them the way that they can understand that they're worthy, to show them the pathway that they can understand how they can have significance, how they can have consistency in their business, how they can have predictability in their business. And I wrote that down. And then I went through my list a few, maybe once or twice a year. And I just realized like, oh my goodness, I just cross things off. I'm not even consciously looking to, like, I'll consciously do something and I don't have an awareness that I wrote that down. And then I look at the list, a year or so later, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I did that. So that's a part of the programming. And then your thoughts lead to your feelings, which lead to your actions, which lead to your results.
I know we're spending a lot of time on this mindset part. Obviously,
we should, Justin, real quick. I hate to interrupt you, but we should, because this is where life starts. right? This is where business starts. I'm sorry, I just get so passionate. Go ahead.
No, I feel the same way. I was going on the same path, and I love the jolt of energy. Because some people might like, well, give me to the brass tacks. Give me like what do I say when I get on the phone? Like the reality is, going back to the point that you mentioned, right? Is that at the end of the day, if you say an affirmation and afterwards, because I've been guilty of this, where I'll say like a really powerful affirmation and then I'll catch myself thinking or saying quietly like, oh, that's not going to happen this year. Right. And probably,
well, that's an affirmation also.
Right. Exactly. I immediately neutralize what I just said. Like I moved my subconscious forward, and then my conscious mind said, whoa, not so fast. You realize there's COVID-19. Whoa, not so fast. You realize there's whatever. Oh, like you don't know how to do that. Right. So I think it's so important to realize this importance of creating affirmations, right? Stating them, and then being sure that the thoughts and feelings that follow that immediately support that. Because if it's contrary, then it wasn't, you're right. You disaffirm the affirmation you just made, right? When you don't believe, like you said, when you don't believe what you're saying. So let's go even deeper on this. Let's keep peeling the onion. This is fun. How do you believe it then? Like,
so you may try a different affirmation. Okay. So your affirmation may be, I'm going to achieve X. Mm-hmm. And then the next thought is, well, that's a bunch of whatever. Okay. There's two things here. Number one is you cannot control your first thought. Okay. Because that first thought is coming from your subconscious. That thought that says, no, that ain't happening. That's not a conscious thought. That's a subconscious thought. However, you can control your second thought. Okay. Because you can't control that first thought. And when that thought pops up, now you can sit there and say, now you can start having a discussion with yourself. And a discussion with yourself may look something like, well, is that true? And a better question than that is, has anybody ever achieved that? Okay, because if anybody else has achieved that, then what did they do? Okay, so now you can start breaking it apart. Now, the other piece of it is, when I mentioned previously, you may want to try, and you may want to do a different affirmation. Perhaps instead of an affirmation such as, I'm going to achieve X, then the affirmation may be something like, I'm going to embrace my fears and take action anyway. I'm worthy to achieve my goals, right? Because neither of those affirmations right there have anything to do with taking 10 listings or 2 listings or 1 listing next month. Yet those are the things that are going to stop you. And those are the things that are going to push out that thought to you in your subconscious, right? So there's sort of a dual pathway there. You could do different affirmations that are going to program for that to stop happening. And then until it stops happening, you're going to recognize it. And then the first question you ask yourself, well, has anybody ever closed 10 listings a month? Yes. Okay. Well, what did they do? Okay. Then I'm just going to do that. And if you do that, then you're going to have the same results, or most likely you will.
It really, there's a recipe in place. There's models in place that, like, with enough evidence to show that if you do certain things, you'll get certain results, right? Real estate's not a new industry. It's not a new business. And the path has been well worn for, like, the pathways to success. You're right. What it comes down to is saying, do I really believe that I deserve that? Do I really believe that I could achieve that? Yeah, absolutely. Great. Then you start to buy into the model. Like, okay, well, then what do I need to do? Because at the end of the day, what you do is what the results that you get. But the reality is, you won't do the work unless you believe that it's actually going to work, right?
Yeah, you're working this backwards now. You just did the same model backwards. You won't do the work. That's the action, right? Unless if you believe it, that's the thoughts. And the belief is also the programming, right? So now you're just sort of working it backwards, right? It all goes into how you're programming yourself. And that's the hack, right? And we talked about affirmations and visualizations, also reading, also who you surround yourself with, also exercise, meditation. These are some ways, recreation, relaxation, thinking time. These are some ways that you can, allow yourself to have different programming. And you're completely right. Not only do models define success, they also define lack of success, right? If you and I go out and we ate a bunch of donuts, like that was our entire diet every single day, we're going to get fat, right? That is a recipe for an outcome. And in that case, it's going to be fatness, right? Well, most people can sit there, they can buy into that. They say, yeah, that makes sense. right? But if you flip it on the other side and sit there and say, well, if you do X, such as if you have so many conversations about real estate, such as if you say this to them, and I go through all those scripts in the book as well. I go through the brass tacks. It's not just, mindset. Such as if you do this, you're going to have this as a result. Sometimes it's harder for us to recognize that, right? When you look at it for something that's going to actually benefit you, then that's where all those limiting, thoughts come up, where all those barriers come up. And that's what stops you. Oh, it's COVID-19. How can this be done? Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. Oh, my kid is my daughter, Maggie, she just came in. You don't see it behind this screen about 5 times since I've been on this interview with you, right? Well, that's homeschooling right there, right? She's waiting to have field day with daddy because we're going to take eggs in a spoon and walk it across, from place to place. Apparently, somehow I got volunteered to do that, right? But, that's reality. Yeah. But you got to, face reality and be successful anyway.
I love it, man. Let's go into maybe one just taste of the brass tacks.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we aren't going to be able to cover everything in your book here, but I do want them, as you mentioned, to say that mindset is a critical piece of what you're teaching, but it's not the only piece that you're teaching, right? Once you get people's mind right, though, then they can start to buy into the model. They can start to buy into doing the work. So give us maybe one thing that you believe that agents need to be doing, like once their mindset's right? What's something that they need to be doing, should be doing in order to create that, again, consistent and predictable income? That's the promise we gave to those that were tuning in today, is that we would give them ways that they could create consistent and predictable income. We've delivered on the mindset part, that unless the mindset's right, nothing else matters, right? Because you'll self-sabotage everything. You won't do the work. Okay. Now we're ready to do the work. We get that mindset piece right with all the great tips you've shared with us. What would you give, what advice would you give to those that are listening, something that they need to be doing to be sure that they create consistent, predictable income?
Sure. So as I mentioned to you, there's 10 steps. Okay. And so it would make sense. And we certainly don't have the time to even get through, we're abbreviating the first step, which is flourish. The second step is lead generation. Okay. So for me, every single day for the last 13 plus years, I've put 3 hours of lead generation onto my schedule.
Every day.
The first 3 hours a day, every single day, 5 days a week. Okay. Now, if you can imagine the compound effect of that, of 240 days or so a year times 13 years. Now, of course, we don't like, at one day I had to start at 0, right? So if you're an agent listening or watching this and you want a specific, what do I do? Take 3 hours, put them on your time block. But before you do that, let's backtrack a second. Take your personal time, take your vacation time, take your family time, take your health time, put that on your schedule first. Okay, take all the things that are a priority to you as an outcome of your business and block for that first, right? So every year when I'm doing my business planning, I block a month for vacation time with my family every year. Okay, it may be long weekends, it may be whatever. Then I block my gym time. Then I block my church time, right? Like that's all blocked on my calendar. Then I sit there and say, okay, now I'm going to block my time for my lead generation. Now here's the next piece of that, which most agents don't do. Now I'm going to actually book my appointments. Okay, because my intention is to go on 3 listing appointments every single week, and I pretty much do that. So I have 5 blocks on my calendar for appointments, and they're just in there. So now when I'm lead generating during this 3 hours, my job is to fill in the other time blocks. Okay, now this does a couple things. Is one, it allows for me to be able to focus on the things that are important to me, because if my daughter needs my time, she knows I'm not available at 3 to 4 today because I've got a listing appointment schedule on there, whether I filled it or not. Now, if I'm not able to fill it, then I can just replace that time with more lead generation. And one other thing is, when I started in this business, I say the biggest mistake that I made was I thought that the only thing to building a successful business was finding listings. What I neglected was, and what I do today, and it's at least 50-50, is I spend my time lead generating looking for talented people. Because when I know that I have talented people that I surround myself with, and then I'm able to serve them, give them a vehicle for their success so that they can so that their ambitions are always, within that capsule, where I look at my business as a vehicle for the people's success that are within it. And whatever their goals are, the bigger their goals are, my job is to help them achieve those goals and more. Okay. And so that's all in that the lead generation box. So that's what I would suggest for an agent is schedule the time, even if it's 1 hour. I don't care what it is. Just schedule the time and then be non-negotiable about it. Doesn't have to be 3. If it's 3, you're going to do 3 times as much as it is 1. Yet you have to be non-negotiable. And that time is not looking for listings for your buyers. That time is not doing, whatever on Facebook, unless if it's intentionally creating relationships on Facebook with people for the purpose of being able to find out how you can help them.
So you said 3 listing appointments. Just to clarify something, you said 3 listing appointments a week, but you've got 5 appointments. Help me understand. 5 appointments to lead generate 5 days a week. Is that what you said?
5. So each day, actually I have 7, right? But so each day I've got a box on my thing that says, like today, 3 to 4 listing appointment.
Okay.
Now I did not book that 3 to 4 listing appointment. However, I did book a 1 to 2 listing appointment. Okay. So last week, when I'm looking at the schedule this week, I'm looking at 3 to 4. So my job is to put in, it's a listing appointment with nobody's in that space. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so there's 5 boxes on there and I have to fill 3 of the 5 or 3 of the 7.
Got it. Okay. So you've got 5 slots. The goal is to fill at least 3 of them.
Correct.
And so you go into your lead generation. I think this is a great tip for anybody listening here today. It gives you a taste of the value of what Dan brings to the industry. The value of what Dan's book is going to bring into your life is that oftentimes people talk about, I'm going to lead gen, right? In fact, I had this conversation with an agent and she said, I'm struggling a little bit. And I said, let's talk about, your schedule. And she opened it up and there were she had a home inspection in the morning. And I said, no, wait, isn't that the time that you need to be generating leads? And she was like, yeah. And I said, do you think that inspector would move that inspection to the afternoon? Well, probably. He actually said that I could either schedule it for 10 or 2. I was like, why didn't you take the 2? I don't know. I just wanted to get it out of the way early. So that non-negotiable component, that you shared, is that you've got to control it as if that's a commitment, an appointment with your very most important clients is that commitment to go find new clients, right? Because if you don't find the new clients, then pretty soon you're out of business.
And not only that, you're not giving your clients that you currently have the service that they deserve. Because if I have 1 buyer or 3 buyers and I don't have the predictability of consistency, okay, and I'm working with that 1 or 3 buyers today, I'm also going to have a little bit of desperation of how am I going to eat in the summertime? And if I have that desperation, then am I truly looking out as a fiduciary for my client's interest, or am I looking out for my own interest? So I believe that agents owe it to their clients to have a consistent business because, I don't want to get fired. I don't want to lose a listing. I don't want to have a listing go expired or withdrawn. And when it does, because if you do enough business, it's going to happen, it doesn't necessarily bother me. Right? I don't want that to happen. Okay. Don't get me wrong. Yet it's not going to devastate me financially. Right? I'll be fine because I've got another 15 coming right after that because of that consistency in that lead generation.
Dan, I've never heard it said like that. And I just want to reiterate it because I think it's so important that sometimes agents will fool themselves by saying, no, I have a client. They deserve all of my attention right now. And so
they do.
That's a subconscious programming thing. Maybe it's an actual misinformed conscious decision of thinking okay, my client gets every minute of every day. But you're right. The viability of the business is at stake and your ability to properly serve them in a way that's not self-serving because it has to be because that's the only way you're going to be able to pay your mortgage.
Yeah.
And I think when we look at lead generation that way is we're serving our clients. Again, I'm just restating what you said here because it was absolutely brilliant. I have not heard it said that well as the case for having consistent lead generation time is that it serves your current clients the best. I mean, it reminds me of a story. My wife and I, we were early on in our marriage. We didn't have a lot of money. And we were wondering what we should get our families. We were living out of state at college and we really wanted our families to come visit. And so we decided, we splurged and bought every one of our family members a gift certificate to our favorite Philly cheesesteak place. And we were like, this is so cool because they're going to come and then we're going to get to go have lunch with them at this Philly cheesesteak place. Lo and behold, we spent probably at the time, it was maybe $300-400, which was so much money at the time, right? Newly married.
That was $400,000 to you, right?
It felt like
It
that.
might as well have been, right?
I'm gonna find out the place goes out of business. We like spent our
Ah,
everything that every bit of discretionary income and then some to give this, and the place went out of business. And we were to this day, every time we have a Philly cheesesteak, we're like, well, hey, at least this one didn't go out of business, right? And it's this concept of like, in order to be able, as you mentioned, to be a good fiduciary
yeah,
of the clients that we currently have, we can't be worrying about, is our business viable this next month? That causes us to make jaded like decisions that aren't in the best interest of the client.
absolutely. Yep. And you started that saying, we think as agents that putting our clients first is the most important, and it is. And the way that you put them first is by making sure that you have a consistent business.
Yeah.
It's just that second thought there that I think most people miss, or most agents miss.
Yeah, boy, that's a brilliant point, Dan. This has been so insightful. I hope everybody that's listening is like, man, Dan's got some really good insight here. And he has the ability with what he shared in his book to be able to unlock some of the reasons why I'm not doing the consistent work to get me the consistent results, to get me the consistent, predictable income. And where can people get a copy of your book? What does that look like?
Sure. They can visit Amazon, Audible, or they can get it direct at www.therealestateevolution.com. That's therealestateevolution.com. If they visit that website, I'll give it to them for free if they pay for the shipping.
I love it, man. I love it. That's a great offer. I appreciate you sharing that. Dan, we're going to end with the final question, the signature question of the show, which you're a big thinker, right? Not only have you created success for yourself and teammates, but now you're sharing it with other agents through the writing of your book. What does a guy like you do to continue to be a big thinker, to continue to expand your possibilities? What does that look like?
Just believe it. Take the time, take the action, schedule it. Yesterday, I was sitting out at the dog park with my dog while my wife and my daughter, they went for a ride on their bicycles, and I had a book, Keith J. Cunningham's Think Less Stupid, I think is what it's called. And actually, it was, it's right here. Sorry. It was The Road Less Stupid, Keith J. Cunningham. That book right there, the second best book in the world, behind another book here, Real Estate Evolution. And I was taking the time to read through this book yesterday, as I do every weekend, and asking myself powerful questions about how I can be a better business owner, how I can be a better leader, how I can serve more people to achieve their goals and solve their problems. And I think it takes the time to sit down and think of, it just doesn't happen. You have to think, and you have to, if you want to think bigger, I mean, it's right there in your title. You have to actually think, and you have to schedule the time to do so.
Man, schedule time to think. One of my favorite mentors, John Maxwell, has a thinking chair, right? He has a place where he goes to sit and think. And I think we can't underestimate the power of that, of taking time to read and think. And obviously you've done that. And that's how you've been able to create the success that you have for yourself and that you're now creating for other people. So I want to thank you so much for your contribution to the Think Bigger Real Estate audience today. We're grateful for you. I appreciate you very much, and look forward to staying in contact, continue to see your rise and all the good that you do in the industry and beyond. So again, I want to thank you for coming on. And to those that are listening, my final request of you are these 3 simple words, and they are go think bigger. Dan, thanks so much for your help and helping us do that today. It's been super fun getting to know you, and I've really, really found tons of value in what you've shared today.
Thank you.